A major environmental protest is shaping up for tomorrow morning in the so-called Arizona Strip between the Utah border and the north rim of the Grand Canyon. The issue is uranium mining, and the protesters are from a radical group known as Earth First. Environment specialist John Hollenhorst has details.
For the last few days, the unabashedly militant group called Earth First has been camping out near the Grand Canyon.
Our state is a dumpsite. Uranium-238.
It's their annual national rendezvous, and as they do each year, Earth First activists have selected an environmental target.
What's at issue here, I feel, is the industrialization of the Grand Canyon area.
Uranium mining first came to the area in the early 1980s after the discovery of a rich deposit of ore. There are now 3 mines in operation and 3 more under development about 20 miles from Grand Canyon National Park. Earth First has singled out one of the mines for a demonstration, and they promise acts of civil disobedience.
Well, it focuses people's attention on the fact that the public lands are being used for a very poisonous kind of a purpose by people who are only in it for a big buck and have got nothing in it for the rest of us at all.
Predictably, those attitudes have stirred resentment in the nearby towns of Kanab, Utah, and Fredonia, Arizona. Residents there appreciate the uranium boom.
It helps a lot around here. Used to be a lot of tourists, but there's not that many, and brings a lot of jobs and more people into town.
Most people don't even know where they're mining it, except the ecologists, and they just go look for it, so they'll have something to complain about.
The Lord gave us the earth to use. Economically, we need that to exist in this area.
When the fuel's dug up, it leaves holes in the ground, holes in the ground, holes in the ground, and uranium tailings scattered around Indian grounds, Grand Canyon grounds.
When the Earth First rendezvous began, several hundred campers were on hand, but most went home over the weekend, so less than 100 protesters are expected. John Hollenhorst, Eyewitness News, near Fredonia, Arizona.
KUTV News.
Good evening. It was a battle of banners and chants against ore trucks as 20 protesters were arrested this morning in the Arizona Strip. The members of the radical environmental group Earth First want to shut down production of uranium near the Grand Canyon.
And that's what they did for a short time today as demonstrators scaled fences and sat down in front of oil trucks. Our regional reporter Larry Warren was there, and he has the story now live via KUTV News Star. Larry?
Hello, Michelle. This is the Pigeon Mine about 30 miles southwest of Kanab, where about 75 Earth First demonstrators gathered this morning, opposing the fact that new uranium mines are opening here in the drainages which lead to the Grand Canyon.
And bring death to this planet!
Earth First gatherings are colorful. The underlying theme of Earth First is that traditional approaches to protecting the environment aren't as effective as direct action.
Let's get out in front of this one, man. Let's go.
The group advocates civil disobedience and even sabotage as tools in the environmental cause. To protest stepped-up uranium mining and increased mineral leasing of federal lands, demonstrators scaled barbed wire fences and climbed to the top of the mine headframe, forcing mine operators to temporarily shut down. As some protesters were arrested, others blocked loaded ore trucks.
And we're here as a wild bunch of eco-radicals to put an end to this.
This kind of travesty is going on in a sacred canyon, along the sacred canyon, the Grand Canyon, a public treasure, a national treasure.
Uranium mining, leave it in the ground.
Uranium miners let Arizona deputies handle the trespassers and offered little comment.
These people got a right to their opinion, you know. It's America. That's all I can say.
Energy Fuels Nuclear, the operator of this mine, and 3 others along the outskirts of the Grand Canyon, beyond the boundaries, by the way, of Grand Canyon National Park, said its main concern was for the safety of its workers. No one on either side was injured at all today. The company said it likely will press charges. After the 2-hour demonstration, the mining resumed and the Earth Firsters went on their way. Randall, Michelle?
Hey Larry, why is uranium mining increasing there when the nuclear industry is shutting down mines in Utah and lots of other places in the West?
A good question. This is a brand new mine. 3 more are in development right now, and thousands of acres are being leased on the outskirts of the Grand Canyon on BLM land. The reason is in the last 10 years they've found uranium deposits here 5 times richer than other uranium mines, and that's why the old inefficient mines are being closed down and these are opening up.
Okay, quite a day. Thanks a lot, Larry, for your report. Randall?
Nearly 24 militant environmentalists were arrested at a uranium mine in northern Arizona today. The protesters object to what they call the industrialization of the so-called Arizona Strip north of the Grand Canyon. Our environment specialist, John Hollenhorst, has the story via Star West 5 from the rim of the Grand Canyon.
About 75 protesters joined in a hot, dusty march about 20 miles north of the Grand Canyon. Earth First opposes uranium mining anywhere, but especially so close to a national park.
The energy fuel fools my minions.
The demonstrators were stopped at the front gate, but about a dozen scrambled over fences and infiltrated the mine site. A few climbed onto piles of uranium tailings. Others climbed the 6 or 8 story head frame above the mine shaft. Arrests quickly followed, including several people who briefly chained themselves on top of the tower. Others were arrested after they blocked ore trucks. In all, 22 were taken into custody.
I think the people who get arrested are committed to making the point that it's worth getting arrested to get the mine shut down.
These things will continue, and eventually we will bring uranium mining to a halt.
By staging their event at a mine operated by the Energy Fuels Company, some local residents say Earth First picked the wrong target.
I've seen their work, I've seen their reclamation. Energy Fuels is top of the market as far as a company that takes care of the land.
All it does is make us angry at those people that come into our area and try to tell us how to allocate the resources in our area.
The trespassers were brought to court here in Fredonia. The other protesters are on their way home, and the uranium mine is back in business. But Earth Firsters say this is only the beginning of demonstrations on the Arizona Strip. John Hollenhorst, Eyewitness News, Fredonia, Arizona.
A couple of weeks ago, some radical environmentalists made news by getting themselves arrested during a protest at a uranium mine near the Grand Canyon. As demonstrations go, it was a bit more dramatic than those you usually see because it provided some startling television pictures. John Hollenhorst covers environmental issues, and this evening he's here to give us some background on the people behind Earth First, and they put together a real dramatic demonstration.
Well, Bruce, this is a group that has pretty much given up on mainstream politics as a means of getting what they want. Instead, they've kind of adopted the idea of theatrical demonstrations to get what they want, and they tend to operate sort of on the fringes of the law.
Did they adopt their agenda from that Edward Abbey novel?
Well, they've all read the book. As you recall the book, it's about a group of radical, the group of radical environmentalists who go out and sabotage government equipment and mining company equipment and so on. They take on the enemies of the environment through sabotage. Now, Earth First has adopted some of the inspiration of that book, if not necessarily its tactics.
When the fuel's dug up, it leaves holes.
It's a group that specializes in catchy songs, weird costumes, flashy protests staged for the news cameras, and strong rhetoric about the environment.
But it's a commitment to try and stem the tide of destruction.
So who are these people, this ragtag bunch of 1960s hippies and 1970s free spirits who make the Sierra Club look as tame as the Chamber of Commerce?
Our state is Dumpsite.
Straight environmental movement, the established environmental movement, is merely trying to reform the system as it is. And I think what we want to do is we want to shake the system up, turn it upside down, and start completely over again.
If you think all this is a strange byproduct of the Ronald Reagan era, you're wrong. Earth First actually started during the Carter administration, when a few environmentalists got fed up with politics. The movement quickly spread overseas to places like Australia. Earth First's motto is no compromise. Their chosen tactic is confrontation.
So we're kind of a last-ditch effort to save some of these wild areas after they've been dealt away in smoky back rooms. And what we're trying to do is bring the struggle right out here in the trees and the parks where the real damage is taking place.
Many Earth Firsters idolize the fictional Monkey Wrench Gang, which committed sabotage against enemies of the environment.
The group as a whole certainly doesn't advocate monkey wrenching. It's an individual matter, a matter for the individual conscience.
Earth Firsters claim to be a movement without leaders, operating by consensus rather than edict. But when it comes to protests, they are well organized. The target is scouted carefully days in advance. This time, it's a uranium mine 20 miles from the Grand Canyon. Earth First wants it shut down because they claim it pollutes the environment and mars the scenery.
It's 8 miles after you hit the pavement.
The day before the protest, Earth First plans the strategy thoroughly, and each person decides whether or not to get arrested.
The other states all love us because we rarely take a stand.
By the time they put on their radiation suits and animal costumes, several news cameras are on hand. That's because Earth Firsters have called news organizations all over the region, inviting them to attend, news helicopters and all. The march ends at the front gate, where the chanting and theatrics begin in earnest. The orchestration of the event continues right up to the gate of the plant. Most of what's going on back here is essentially a diversion, while Earth First activists are getting ready elsewhere to escalate the situation. Up to this point, the overall strategy is a secret, but then Earth Firsters quietly spread the word to newsmen. Keep an eye on the man in the red T-shirt, perched on a bluff behind the uranium mine. The protesters coordinate by walkie-talkie. They want arrests eventually, one of them tells us, but they want the timing to be just right.
They'll make the decision when they want to go in.
What will they be taking into account when they decide that?
Number of personnel around, what the situation looks like to them.
Do they want more cops or fewer cops?
Off the record?
Yeah.
Fewer right now.
Another diversion. A group of protesters makes a scene near the front gate. Then the main event. Several Earth Firsters invade the compound, scrambling over fences and down a steep bank, heading for the huge tower above the mine. As the befuddled cops start to react, the demonstrators climb the tower, creating a spectacle that will make an irresistible image for the television cameras. As the sympathizers cheer, more than a dozen trespassers make it over the fences, unfurling banners and putting on a show for the cameras. The inevitable arrests are made, 22 in all. It all goes like clockwork, and a lot of it will wind up on television.
This is a start. It's a major upgrade of the activities that have happened around here as far as protesting. These things will continue, and eventually we will bring uranium mining to a halt.
In nearby Kanab, Utah, though, the Earth Firsters are viewed with hostility by people who disagree with their tactics and question their sincerity.
These guys get together for a party, basically. I used to do it in the 60s myself. But don't put down one of the few economic things around here to work. They're fighting our economy around here.
It's something so sad, the truth is so full.
Earth First tactics have been delighting some people and annoying others for years, but there's no indication yet that they ever intend to tone things down.
They staged this as a media event. How do you feel about being drawn in to suit their agenda?
Well, we were drawn in, but I think perhaps justifiably so. It is news when somebody feels strongly enough about a subject to get themselves arrested, when 22 of them do. It was dramatic, it was news, and we thought we'd cover it, although I must say that this kind of thing does tend to wear a little thin, so if they do this too much in one region, they might run out of publicity.
What about the reports of vandalism? Are they true?
We kept hearing those kind of reports the whole time we were down there. We were down there for several days while this group was camping out in that region, and we kept hearing reports of vandalism. And every time we tried to check one out, it would sort of evaporate. The people that supposedly had it happen to them, we couldn't find them or whatever. The law enforcement officials we talked to said there were no unusual cases of vandalism, nothing out of the ordinary. They thought it was actually quite a peaceful group, from what they could tell.
Their opponents charge that Earth First is in favor of AIDS. What's that all about?
Well, there is some truth to that. This is a recent copy of the Earth First newspaper in which they talk about the world's population being the greatest environmental problem.
Just a moment.
AIDS is a possible way to reduce the population. This article says, as radical environmentalists, we can see AIDS not as a problem, but a necessary solution. Parenthetically, it says one you probably don't want to try for yourself.
That's probably radical. I mean, that's probably fair to say that's radical.
Pretty radical. The editor told us it was meant in all seriousness, and Earth First people, by and large, have agreed with that editorial, he said.
Earth First, thank you. John Hollenhorst. We'll be back with more Primetime Access after these messages.